What's going on, everybody? I am so excited to have my buddy, and I mean that, my friend, Jeremy Lee, a guy who is an important member of the hobby, the best live streamer of sports card content, bar none, not even close, Saturday nights on Sports Cards Live. It is very humbling for me, Mr. Lee, to have you on the channel.
Come on, G. It's my honor to be here. I consider you a friend, and thanks for the invitation. I'm grateful.
It's taken too long, and I was trying to set something up with a couple of your Sports Cards Lives regulars, and we'll still do that. But finally, I'm like, I want to have you on. It's been too long. It should have already happened. I'm also a guy who doesn't like to bother people, so asking people to come on, I feel like, well, I don't. That guy doesn't want to come on my channel. So, but I'm glad that you're here. There's a lot going on in the hobby. And this is part 3 of my 3-part series, all of which are with Sports Cards Lives people. Started with Joe Perot. We are recording this on Tuesday, the 18th. And then that's the day that the video posted with Joe. And then yesterday, when this airs, Thursday, is a conversation with Hoj, and now with you. And what I'm feeling is in the hobby right now, there is some concern. There is some concern about what is real, what is not real. And I don't want to keep talking about the drama and who said what and when they said it and why they said it. I'm ready to say, okay, we are where we are. Where do we go from here? What can we trust? What should we trust? What should we do? And move on. And so I think you're about as dialed in as anybody I know in the whole industry. And I think that you're going to be the perfect person for this conversation. But I'm going to put on the screen before I turn it over to you. I do want to lead with one thing. I am going to do 10 thoughts with you where I am going to give you a prompt, and then that's going to lead us. Now, as a teacher, we have to have our we have to have our agenda. We have to have our structure. So this is the way that I am. And my first thing, though, before we go too far, is tell us about your. This is number one. Topic one. Tell us about your recent announcement. That announcement being what you shared with everybody on Saturday night.
Yeah, I've just about completed writing a manuscript, a book, and I'd been teasing that on my channel, on my live streams for several months now, sort of saying, guys, I'm working on something. And it's at the point now where I was like, I think now's the time to formally announce it, especially with all the chatter about auctions and reserves and shill bidding. And I guess the reason for that is because I had been already, since before this recent auction drama took hold of the hobby, I had already started working on a pretty broad analysis of auction company policies. Four specific policies per auction company that I was looking at. Those being, I'm sorry if I'm skipping ahead here, Greg, but
You go.
So those being reserve policies, shill bidding policies, house bidding policies, and employee bidding policies. And the reason I was going down that road was because in my manuscript, I had made mention very sort of quickly or casually in the context of one of the chapters about how, when you are analyzing a comp, you might want to at least have in the back of your mind and be aware that there are some platforms where the consigner is having bids placed on their behalf up to the reserve. And so be aware of that. And one thing led to another, and I realized with the help of a friend of mine who had been sort of lightly reviewing my earlier drafts of the manuscript, and this individual said to me, here's an opportunity to really do more here. It would be valuable. I said, you're absolutely right. And I thought, okay, I'll cover 4 or 5 auction houses, and then maybe also the auction houses that I do work with. And then I realized, no, this has to be more broad. So I've got 32 auction houses now in Appendix F of the book. And, this Appendix F and all this auction house policy business is, again, it's Appendix F is the 6th of 7 appendices in my book. And there's 83 chapters as well. So this isn't a short little book. This is a serious sort of handbook, if you will. And so because of all this recent drama, and I don't say drama in a derogatory way. I mean, because of all this recent information and all the discourse, I thought I'll let people now know that I'm working on this book and that Appendix F will be addressing these concerns and really helping educate people on some of these policies that auction companies operate under, that a lot of people who are bidding on these auction platforms are not aware of. How often do you actually go read the terms and conditions or the auction rules on an auction platform before you place a bid? So the timing was right. It's now put me under the gun to get the book done. It's basically done, Greg. Like, first I thought I would have it out for the National. Then I thought I would have it out for the Saskatchewan show in early October. Then I thought I'd have it out for the Expo a few weeks ago. And now I'm hoping to get it done by the end of the year, like available to purchase on Amazon. The book's title is Pops and Comps. That's the title. Very simple, Pops and Comps. And the subtitle is Truths, Insights, and Psychology Behind the Numbers That Drive the Sports Card Market. And really, it's got 6 parts. The first part lays some foundation. Part 2 is called Pops, which really covers everything from population reports to print runs and supply, and of course, grading. Population reports refer to grading, as we all know. So I've covered what I think is the whole spectrum of sort of the world of grading. And so that's Pops. Comps covers comps, of course, and really how to interpret them. And that was the section that led to Appendix F. Then we have the integration, bringing Pops and comps together to help you see the fuller picture. Part 5 is called demand drivers. So it's really all the different things that I could at least think of that help drive demand and value in our hobby. And finally, part 6 is called psychology. And it covers many of the psychological drivers that and the psychological axes that really drive the way we as collectors think in the hobby, how we attribute value, and really what forms our mindsets, motivations, and behavior.
I'm excited for it. And one of the things that I think is interesting is there aren't really that many decent books on the hobby. Like, there just aren't. I mean, we could poke a couple of jokes on a few that have come out over the last few years, but I think a lot of people love this hobby. They love knowing, learning more about the hobby, how it works, how prices work, how demand works, how the auction houses even work. There's a lot of people, the only auction house they'll use is eBay. And I think this is going to fill a major void as a go-to book that a lot of us are going to utilize and talk about a lot. And I'm really excited for it. I'm hoping I think you need to reach out to Mikey and say, I might need a table at Strongsville because I'm gonna be selling some books. That's what I'm hoping. So
Yeah.
I'm pumped for it. I'm really excited to see the finished product and get a signed copy of it. So this is a need, I think, and I'm excited that you're the one that's going to be filling that need. I'm going to go to my second prompt for you, and my second one is going to skip to 3. I'm going from 1 to 3, and you'll see why here when I put it on the screen. So my third prompt for you is finish the sentence. Auction houses are. Auction houses are. How would you finish that sentence?
I have a few finishings. One is auction houses are misunderstood.
Hmm.
Auction houses are in the hobby to fulfill more needs than people generally uh, would recognize. And Yeah, I think those are the two that come to mind. But I reserve the right to have another response to that over the next couple minutes.
Anytime you want, you just hop back in. So let me ask you this. I would go so far as to say right now, you probably know more about the rules and regulations and behaviors of auction houses more than probably anybody, would be my guess. Right now, you are the expert in that. In that research, are there any auction houses, and you don't even necessarily have to list them, but are there any auction houses that you'd say, based on my research now, I don't know if I'd use them? Or on the contrary, are there any that after your research you said, I hadn't really used them before, but after learning more about what they're all about, I'm more likely to use them?
Yeah, great question. I mean, there are a couple. So it's so interesting and nuanced, to use a catchphrase we all love to use. But um, you know, there what I've learned is just the extent of what I never knew. And when you become informed, you understand the rules of the game that you're about to play. I'm not going to go play basketball if I don't know the rules. I mean, I'm going to run up and down the court and not bounce the ball because I don't know that there's a rule called traveling, and someone might think I'm, that I'm cheating or whatever. The rules are just they're unknown. I think that the biggest challenge that man, Greg, I can come at this from so many directions. Let me step back. One of the biggest challenges that auction houses have is that with the hobby public, the segment of the hobby public that was raised on the eBay type of auction, which is all electronic, it's all online. There's never been an in-house, like a live eBay paddle type auction that I'm aware of. Um, we've been brought up under in that landscape, and auction companies, the traditional auction houses, they've been doing business almost the same way for 150 years, whether it's selling sports cards or fine art or wine or real estate or vehicles, whatever it is. And I think what these auction houses have done when they entered the sports card market, whether it was 40 years ago or 5 years ago or this year, well, maybe not this year, but the older ones have basically tried to replicate the in-person auction bidding experience in a digital platform, and it doesn't translate perfectly. And it is that mistranslation that is causing a lot of these issues in the hobby right now that people are talking about. And so the other challenge that auction houses have and the hobby public has is that we go into these auctions and we bid without understanding what we're doing. We know what we're doing. We're going to place a bid, but we don't know what the rules of the game are. You're not going to go sit down at the casino and play poker, Greg, if you don't know that a flush beats a straight. You'd be
Right.
in, right? You're just not going to do that. And
Yeah.
if you did that and then you thought, but what do you mean a straight looks way cooler than a flush? And they're going to look at you and say, well, you're just wrong. That's not going to work. Well, don't get mad at them. Get mad at yourself for not knowing the rules. So I'm going to not contradict, but I'm going to take the other side now and say, I also don't think that the auction houses have done enough to make their rules more obvious to
Mm.
this new generation of sports card auction bidder, because I think they somewhat have the they've got the tunnel vision going on, where they've been dealing with customers who bid in traditional auctions for so many years that understand these rules, and they haven't really come up against many non-traditional auction participants who are going to raise their hand and say, what's going on here? How did the bid just go from 25,000 to $49,000 in one quick bid? How did that happen? People don't understand what's going on. They think there's funny business going on, when really all you have to do is read the terms and conditions to understand what might have happened. That said, I struggle a little bit to decide. On Saturday night's episode of Sports Cards Live, I was expressing my I don't know, cynicism, or I was directing my energy at the auction houses as far as, what are you guys doing? You're bidding on behalf of your consigner, and it sounds like shill bidding. I think that I was maybe a little bit unfair. I'm not going to say I was completely unfair, but I think that some of the direction of my comments could have been made towards myself, yourself, and anyone who's ever bid on one of these online auctions that is not your eBay style. What is, again, built on the traditional in-person paddle type auction format. So yeah, I mean, I think that as far as auction houses go, if once you read these rules and you understand them, you really don't have much to criticize. Now, there are some auction houses that do very obviously state that, the consigner of the item can bid on their own item in our auction. Some people will tell you that that's shill bidding, and that is illegal. Well, if that was really illegal, like if that was fraud, how could it be written into the policies of the auction company? Now, I don't know. Maybe they have an illegal policy written in this particular auction company. I don't know. I don't know the state and federal laws. But to me, that's a situation where I don't want to necessarily be bidding on those items unless I know who I'm up against. Well, believe it or not, that particular auction company has a symbol on those listings that tell you that you might be bidding against what they call an interested party, which is either someone who consigned the item, or maybe grandpa dies and his cards go into an estate, and the estate gives the cards to an auction house to sell them, and there's beneficiaries of the estate. Maybe grandpa has 10 grandchildren, and one of those grandchildren wants to buy the item, and they want to buy the item because amongst them and their 9 cousins, they couldn't figure out who gets to keep what. So they become what's called an interested party, and this particular auction house will put a symbol in the listing that indicate. Now, you have to go read what the legend to see what this means and how many people are going to do that. But what that symbol means is that an interested party may be bidding on the item. Well, if you're a beneficiary of the trust that sent these items to this auction house, is that shill bidding? Well, maybe, because you're entitled to 10% of the proceeds if you don't win the auction, in which you pay for it, and then your cousins each get the 10% from you. But it's written into the policies that might happen. There's only 1 or 2 auction houses that I can recall that have a policy like that, where they do permit their consigners or interested parties to bid. The other issue, and this is the issue that I think, and jump in anytime, Greg. I know I'm
No,
going on.
I am absolutely fascinated by what you're saying. Keep going. You're on a roll.
The other issue, and this is the one I think that is causing most people grief right now, and it causes me grief as well, but I do have a bit of a different understanding of it today, is that I can send an item to auction, traditional auction house, and let's say that I want to get 100 grand for I'm just going to use a big number. Let's say I want to get $100,000 for the item minimum. And I'm going to say to the auction house, listen, okay, I want you to put a reserve of $100,000. Let's start the bidding at 10 grand and let's see what happens. But I'm not letting go for under $10,000. And then the bidding starts. The auction opens and bids come in 10,000, 12, 14, maybe it gets bid up to $35,000. And I want 100. I think it's worth 100. And then maybe the bidding slows down for a few days. A couple days go by and the bid is now up to $50,000. And there's only really one guy at this point who's left bidding. Nobody else is there to bump that bid up past 50. Remember, I want 100 grand for the item. But that one guy who's left, Greg, that one guy's willing to pay $100,000. But there's no mechanism to push that bid up. And many auction companies don't have a mechanism to push the bid up, even though there's a willing buyer and there's a willing seller, both of them. So what's going on right now in our discourse amongst me, you, and all of our content creator friends, a lot of people are saying, well, then the item just should not sell because there wasn't another bidder there to push the item up. But what happens is auction companies, almost all of them, not all, but almost all of them have a clause written in their terms and conditions that says that we, the auction company or the auctioneer or the system, will place bids on the item on behalf of the consignor up to one bid increment below the reserve, either in response to other bids or successively or consecutively. Those words are used interchangeably. So what that means is that my item, I want 100 grand, that's the reserve. The bid's at 50,000. There's only one bidder left and he bid 50. There's no one else. Greg, you're not there. You're not another legitimate third-party bidder who's going to come in and bid 55 grand such that I can now bid 60 to try and outbid you to win the item. There's no other bidder. So under this policy, the auction company system comes in and it'll bid 55,000. And then I know I've been outbid. It's now at 55. Do I want to bid 60? I have to make that decision. So let's say I decide, you know what? I'm willing to pay 60. I'm going to bid 60. Auction company on behalf of the consignor bid 65. I have to bid 70 if I want the item. And let's say I'm willing to pay 100. And this goes on and on until the auction company makes its final bid on behalf of its consignor of $95,000. And then I have to decide if I want to bid 100 grand. And I may or may not know, by virtue of the auction company disclosing, whether or not my next bid is going to lock in like the win, as if not the win, but will remove the reserve, and it will now say reserve met. So I bid 100. I can't. We're talking as if I'm the consignor. So
Right.
The last remaining bidder bids $100,000, and the item sells to that person. There's no other bidders. It sells for 100 grand. Seller gets their $100,000 reserve. Buyer gets it for what they're willing to pay. But the buyer was bidding against the reserve, or bidding against the consignor, or bidding against the auction house the whole way from 50 grand up to 100. And I think some people have a problem with that. They think, well, you're bidding against the seller. That's shill bidding on behalf of the seller. In a way, it kind of is. It kind of is. The bidder is bidding on their own item by virtue of setting a $100,000 reserve. However, I think there's another way to look at it, which is that an auction company's job is to match a buyer and a seller together to sell an item. And if the buyer is truly willing to spend $100,000 on that item, even though no one else is, but the buyer's willing to, is there really any harm in the auction company placing those bids? And I'll tell you why I think there is harm in the auction company placing those bids. And then I'll tell you why I think there might not be. The reason why I think there is harm in the auction company placing those bids is because the bidder who wants the item, and maybe other bidders who are observing the item, they don't know who these bids are coming from. I think that if the auction companies were to say, okay, it's at 50 grand and the reserve, the auction company comes in and bids 55. If I'm now the last bidder, I want to know who placed that bid. I want to know if that bid was placed by another legitimate third-party buyer, or if it was placed by the auction company on behalf of the seller towards the reserve, because that's going to maybe change the way I want to proceed. If I know there's another legitimate third-party bidder out there, I might be more willing to keep on bidding, because that basically affirms my valuation of the item and lets me know that I'm not the only sucker out there who wants to keep on bidding. There might be someone else. And that just gives me some validation that the amount that I'm willing to pay, there's someone else out there who might also be willing to. And if I need to get out of it, I'm more confident that someone might come in and be able to buy that and want to buy that card for me at that price. So my issue with these auction company policies are that there's no transparency in most cases, almost all cases, into who is bidding along with me up to the reserve. Now, before I continue, I just want to mention that I've talked to several auction companies, and it's unbelievable how few reserve auctions there truly are. One big auction company, they'll have 4,000 items in their auction. There might be 5 or 6 that have reserves. So this issue of bidding up to the reserve by the auction company on behalf of the consignor, what some people would consider to be shill bidding, it's not a pervasive issue. The bigger issue is simply true shill bidding. Bidders bidding up their own items on items that don't even have reserves. That's a different issue. So I think that as far as this bidding up to one increment below the reserve, I don't think it's as egregious as I think it's more egregious than it needs to be, because the auction companies are not being transparent about who the other bidder is, I'd like to see that change. That's a change that would make me 100% comfortable bidding on items where I'm clearly bidding against the seller. I just want to know that I'm bidding against the seller because that might change the amount of bidding I'm willing to do. I'll
So
pause.
you just yeah, that was I mean, you just brought up a lot of the topics and you brought up pro and con arguments for them, sharing both sides. I think you did a really good job of sharing the two perspectives. Let me ask a couple of follow-up questions because if I'm out there listening, I would say, and I know you're not defending auction companies necessarily or any of these policies. You're explaining why the policies are the policies, which I totally understand.
I'm
So,
also I'm also trying to clarify. I'm also using this opportunity to clarify some of the comments I made on my show last Saturday.
okay, fair. And I'm glad that you're doing that and you have that opportunity here. And I want you to know when you see me writing, looking down, I take furious notes as I'm going because things are popping in and out of my head so
I do the
quickly.
same
Because
thing.
so
Yeah.
just know that I'm not ignoring you. I'm listening very intently. My first thing I think people out there would be saying is if this person wanted $100,000 for the card and that was the least that they wanted, why not just start the auction at $100,000 instead of $10,000? And I know that the immediate response is, well, it doesn't look as appealing if it doesn't have any bids yet and having some action. I understand that it doesn't look as appealing, but your bottom line is 100,000. So why list it for any amount below your bottom line? Just start it at 100,000. If I'm listening to this and I'm a participant in an auction house, that would be my counter argument.
Yeah.
So why isn't that an easy solution?
Well, because it does it because it's a deterrent to creating competition within the auction. That's why when you look at eBay auctions, most of them start at 99 cents. Most, and you'll notice that if someone starts an auction, if a card is, worth $1,500 and someone starts the auction at $1,500, they might get one bid. At the very end, the item sells and they get their $1,500. If they start that item at 99 cents and they've attracted 15 or 20 unique bidders, and they're placing bid after bid after bid, now you've got more people that are invested in that auction. And they're more, I believe, psychologically, they're more likely to go above that $1,500 comp or whatever that we're saying is the value. So I think it's really just a marketing tactic. And listen, I'm not here defending or
Oh,
suggesting anything. These are just my thoughts. So
and
I think
and that
that's
that I want to make sure that that's clear to people is you are presenting the side of what each is saying. You're not necessarily arguing that this is a good thing that there's house bidding. You're explaining why it's a thing, why it's in
right.
place, and how it works.
But I'm also saying that if I know the rules of the game I'm playing in, I'm going to be more comfortable with those rules so that I can navigate them in a way that makes sense for me as a collector and as a buyer of sports cards. So, but no, you're right. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons is because I think we just know as sellers of cards that if you start the bidding at that high number, you might not get any bids and you're certainly not going to create a bidding war, which is what, listen, auction houses are in business to bring value to their consigners. I believe, and this is my own thoughts, I believe that auction houses, their number one priority is serving the consigner, not the buyer. I think that's just my thoughts. I think that they generally speaking care mostly about the consigner. It's also very competitive right now.
Yeah.
So these auction houses, they they will compete for big consignments, big items, because it's going to bring more attention to their business. Maybe get them on CNBC and those sorts of things. So there's a whole other angle to this, Greg, which is outside of reserves, which is the concept of guarantees, which I talk about in pops and comps, and auction houses giving a guarantee to somebody. That's a whole other bag of uh, worms,
See,
whatever
and this is why I'm excited to read the book is because there are all of these little deer trails off of the main trail of little side things that we don't really necessarily understand. And I think that you're right. I don't understand what house bidding means. I understand a lot better now than I did a second ago, because you, who have studied this, just shared with me what that means. And so I'm excited for this book because I'm excited to see this. And is this a PR tour for the book? Well, partly, it's partly I want to have you on because I want to promote it, because I think it's a valuable asset for us. Because, like you just said, if I understand the rules, then I'm going to be more comfortable in what I'm actually getting myself into. And I think that this book is going to help people understand the rules when they see in the rules and regulations, oh, this is allowed, this isn't allowed, this is allowed. What does that actually mean? I have a couple quick other follow ups. Some people would say that at an auction, the value of the item is not what the one person is willing to pay, it's what the second person is willing to pay. And that's the whole point of an auction, is not what is it worth, it's what is the second person willing to pay for it. And that being worth is, it feels like when there's a house bidding thing like this, it feels like that is no longer the case. It doesn't feel like an auction. Isn't an auction
Yeah,
what another guy will pay?
I think you're exactly right. I think you've just touched on something so critical here, Greg. And by the way, it's a can of worms from earlier. But no, you've hit on something so important here. And I think that auction companies are I think their primary job is to find a buyer and a seller who come to terms together. And that's and they use the auction structure to accomplish that. But it's not the only mechanism that they have at their disposal. The other mechanism that they have at their disposal is this situation where they kind of borrow the auction mechanism, but really some items just don't have many buyers and sellers don't want to let them go. So they use this reserve bidding mechanism to bring a deal, to match a buyer and a seller. I think about it this way, Greg. I can go to a card show and I can go up to a booth and the guy's got a card in his showcase for $10,000. He's had no tire kickers all weekend long. Nobody's paying him 10 grand, but that's his price. I can go up to him and I really want this card. I can say, hey, I love that card. Would you consider 5 grand? He'll be like, no. Oh, okay. Would you consider 6 grand? He'll be like, no.
Hmm.
So now I've gone from 5 to 6, almost implying that he's at 55. Now I'm going to say 6. He'll say no. He'll say no. You gotta come up. Okay. So what? How high do I got to come up? Well, what do you want to bid? Well, okay. What do you want to offer? Maybe I'll pay. Maybe I'll offer you $7,000. And he's going to say no again. And I'm going to say, okay. Well, what's your price? He goes, I'll take anything over $9,500. Okay, so I'll give you $9,550, or I'll give you $9,600. And he'll say, okay, you have a deal. Shake hands. Here's your $9,600. Thank you for the card. It's that.
But that's not an auction.
No,
That's
no,
a card show.
no. But I'm not saying it's an auction. What I'm saying is that is bringing together a buyer and a seller at a price that both buyer and seller are happy at. Now, you could take that exact, me and that same buyer, take that item, put them in an auction, and I could get to that same number with that same seller at an auction house or at a card show. I'm not trying to, I'm not saying anything other than the auction house platform simply acts as a mechanism to bring a buyer and a seller together. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that everyone has to like it. I'm just trying to explain what I've learned after doing I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks of research on this and talking to several people on both sides, and losing my cool on my show last Saturday because it frustrates me too. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying
But
to
I
think
think
about it.
I think what you led with earlier, and this is, we're 34 minutes in. First of all, let me say I'm having a blast. Okay. I am having an absolute blast talking to you about this. Plus, I just like hanging out and talking with you. But when we started, I think that was so brilliant how you set the stage of, we have the foundation of knowledge of an auction is eBay. But these things aren't eBay. These things are something completely different. And they call themselves auctions. And some characteristics of auctions, but they're not really auctions. They have some auction characteristics, but
Well, no,
they're
but
sort of an
but
they're first cousins or maybe second cousins of an auction.
I would argue the other way and say those are auctions. And what we now know about on eBay, those are what have spawned out of the digital world, the online economy. Auctions going back 150 years have been run that way. And
Mm,
this is my problem, Greg, is that these auction companies take 150-year-old policies and procedures and apply them in today's world in a digital world. They don't translate.
yeah.
That 150-year-old auction mechanism does not translate to an online world, especially when most hobby participants were indoctrinated by eBay, where you can list an item on eBay, you can set a reserve. I can list an item on eBay. I can put a reserve of $10,000 on it and start the bidding at 99 cents, but I cannot go in there and place bids on my auction, nor will eBay. eBay will also not go place a bid to get that reserve up. And that's the landscape, and those are the policies and auction rules that we are so used to that we compare everything else to it. I'm guilty. I say guilty of it, but that's how I've done it as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you come to learn and realize that the way auctions have customarily been run in other, whether it's cattle again, or art or wine or jewelry or vehicles, that's the way auctions have been run for 150 years, the way that we, the hobby, don't like it. So I say to myself, okay, so are we that entitled that auction companies should change the way they do business because we don't like it, because eBay taught us something different? Or should we just learn the rules and then decide if we want to bid on these auction platforms or
Th-
not?
This is so fascinating to me, what you're saying. I mean, take somebody from the gold rush in the 1840s and throw them car keys and say, "Hey, there's your vehicle over there. There's your form of transportation." And they're like, "Where do I stick this for the horse?" I
Right, but it's
mean,
not only then. Like, it's, remember that these auction procedures have been in place for that long, but right up until not too long ago. The internet only became a
wow,
thing in the end of
yeah.
the 90s, really, for auctions. So all the way through the mid 90s, this is how things were done. And that's, I think that's a part of the reason why some people are currently misunderstood a little bit, or
Yeah,
what,
and if we go back, that's what you said. When I said auction houses are, you said misunderstood. And I think you're right. I don't think I I don't think it took me a while to get there, but what you're saying makes sense. Is we think of auctions as eBay, but the last 150 years and everybody else thinks of auctions like these auction houses, and we're saying, why aren't you more like eBay?
right?
And again,
Which
just to
is
be
funny.
clear,
It's
yeah,
funny in itself that that's what we're
yes,
saying.
yes,
And I just want to,
and go
sorry, go.
ahead. No,
Well,
you go.
I just want to, we still have to draw the distinction between what we're talking about here and shill bidding. And I
Right.
I am not talking about defensive shill bidding here. I'm
Yes.
just talking about, these are the way that auctions have been run for decades and decades. And listen, I don't like it. I don't want to bid against a seller on an auction platform. I'd rather do it at a card show where I can look him in the eye, because the problem is that these auction companies, you don't know that you're bidding against the seller, and I hate that. To
Yeah.
me, that's bad.
Yeah.
I want to know who I'm bidding against, because if I see, I'm getting excited again. If I
I
don't
love
know
it.
who I don't listen. If I'm going to go buy an item on a platform and I really want that card and I'm willing to pay the price, I'm going to pay the price no matter what in many cases. But I want to know who I'm bidding against, and I shouldn't say no matter what. I might slow down if I know that there's no other third party legitimate buyer, but I want to know. So this is where I say, if anything comes out of my book or these discussions that you and me are having, and so many other people are having too, publicly on YouTube and elsewhere,
Yeah.
is that, and I can tell you already, Greg, I think that you're going to see a change with at least one auction company going in this direction, because I had a conversation today with one of them, and I said, this is the problem. The problem might not be that your system places bids for the seller. That might not be the problem. The problem is that we don't know about it. We don't know who we're bidding against. So so would you consider putting a descriptor or a note in that listing that says that the bid that just came in atop your bid was placed by the system on behalf of the seller in an effort to reach the reserve, the minimum amount the seller is willing to receive? If you told me that and I'm bidding on an item, I'm going to feel a lot better about it.
Yeah.
Now, is that shill bidding? Well, if shill bidding is truly fraud and is truly illegal, then that is not shill bidding, because that is not illegal and never has been. So I think we're using a lot of words in hobby discourse right now that I don't think a lot of us understand or know what they truly mean. And I think that is causing a big miscommunication amongst different people who are listening to many of the talking heads like ourselves.
Right.
And I don't think that people really understand what it is that's being talked about. So
I think we all agree. We all agree. Well, I think at least you and I agree that if I put a card up for auction and I want 100,000 on it, and I don't set any system in place, which is apparently legal with the auction house, and I go, Jeremy, do me a favor, just keep bidding this up until it gets to 100,000. That's not okay. That is clearly out of bounds and not okay. And this is a procedure within auctions, what you were describing, that has been happening for a long time. I'm going to tie this into my next point, but I want to go back, and I just want to this has been on my mind, and I have to just erase it from my mind. You said a few minutes ago, you used the example of bidding on your own card, Cindy bidding on grandpa's item that the trust owns. And the issue I'm having with that example is Cindy doesn't own it. She's not bidding on her own thing. She's bidding on something owned by the trust, right? The trust owns no?
Well, no, listen, but she is defined by the terms of that auction house as an interested party. To me,
Yeah.
that's already close enough. But
Yeah.
listen, that auction house will communicate to bidders that there is that interested party who might be bidding on the item. So
yeah.
The other thing is that Cindy could be shill bidding. She could just be doing it because she wants her 10% share to go up.
Yeah, that's not okay. This is where it gets interesting. And we were talking about this on Sunday because there was an auction ending and people were saying, that's my friend's card. I don't want to bid on my friend's card, even though I want to bid on it because I want it at that price. I don't even want to appear as if I'm doing it. So to clarify what I was just saying, I agree with you. I agree with you that Cindy bidding on that to get the price up so that the trust can get more money, not okay. That's clearly not okay. But Cindy's not technically the owner, but she still would be colluding to bid the item up. Here's my next question for you, or next thought. This is the third one, the third of our 10. We're not going to get to them all. That's fine. If you could wave a magic wand and make one change to auction houses, and you were starting to allude to it, how do you finish that?
It's all transparency. It only, to me, comes down to transparency. Honestly, I can play any game if I understand the rules. Or let me rephrase, I can choose to play any game once I know the rules. So the issue of Cindy and the trust and all that, if I know that Cindy might be bidding on the item she owns, I'm probably not going to bid on that item because I don't want to bid against the seller who I feel might be trying to manipulate the bid. Back to that reserves thing just for a second. When the auction house places a bid on behalf of the consigner, is that bid manipulation? Because auction companies have policies on shill bidding. They have another policy maybe on collusion and another policy maybe on price manipulation. And all of these things are kind of the same thing altogether, But I think if you were to analyze them sort of maybe legally or by the dictionary, you'd come up with some different sort of approaches to each of them. So really what I'm most looking for in an auction that I want to avoid, like what I want to, I'm looking, if I'm going to avoid an auction, I'm going to look for opportunities for the seller to be manipulating those prices. Let's face it, doesn't matter what platform it is. There's price manipulation going on all over the place. But we have to then decide to what extent we want to play that game. You know,
Yeah.
if the only way to not bid or buy a card that might have a little bit of shill in it is to stop buying cards altogether. And I'm talking about on any platform or any channel, whether it's an LCS or in person at a card show, because the way the comp economy has taken us over is such that almost every card has some pricing based on comps, or at least they've thought about it. They've tried to triangulate whatever the seller's doing. But as I said the other day, there's a little bit of shill in every card out there. I think I heard you and Joe. Listened to you and Joe today.
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
comment came up. So
Yeah.
if you want to take a stand against the hobby and against price and bid manipulation, you just have to get out. You cannot be in this hobby if it bothers you that much. Now, I'm not saying we have to accept it, but all we can do is try to mitigate it as best we can.
With that, that was a perfect transition to my next question. This next one is, I used to comp cards by blank. Now I comp cards by blank.
It's the same answer for both for me. I use Card Ladder. But I also use my gut feel. So listen, we could drive ourselves crazy by looking at every single comp and trying to figure out how much shill is in there, you know, or if there's any shill bids in there. But even legitimate buyers might be deciding what to bid based on other comps that they've seen that have some shill in them. That's why I say every card in this whole hobby has a little bit of shill in that. If that price is $100, there's a bit of shill in there, whether it's $1 or $50. There's a little bit of shill in that price you're going to pay. So when I'm comping a card, I look at the comps in Card Ladder. I look at eBay and see what else is available for sale. I'll look on Fanatics Collect. I'll look on ComC and see what's out there, if anything, at times. And then I just have to go with my gut. And I can tell you that, you know, after decades in this hobby, Greg, I trust my gut pretty well. And it's worked for me over the years. At the end of the day, these things aren't worth anything. They're not worth anything. They're paper. It's a piece of paper. They're not worth anything inherently, right? So
Sure.
So which is the weakness of them, and that's why this topic is so important, because price manipulation. I'd love to say it has to stop, but that would be so naive. It's not going to stop, unfortunately. It's just not going to stop. Just like crime is not going to stop. Just like speeding in cars is never going to stop.
But things that can be put into place can help it. And I keep going back to you talking about, like, if you make a magic wand, wave a magic wand, and you more transparency. As a teacher, on the first day of class, the only thing I do is I pass out the syllabus. I tell them how I weight the grade. I tell them that I don't accept late work. I tell them what they need to have each day. I set the ground rules for how things work. So literally today, I had a student come up to me. We're getting toward the end of the semester, and the kid said, "Hey, Mr. Miller, can I turn in some late work?" I go, "No, because I have to hold you accountable. Because if I don't hold you accountable, you're never going to learn accountability. And I told you on day one, before we did anything, that this is how we play the game of this class. These are the rules. These are the procedures. And I have to stick to them, or else none of them are worth anything." And I think I totally agree with you that we need to start to learn the rules.
And
And
that's in that situation, Greg, you are the auction house, and you are telling the bidders what the rules are. The problem is the auction houses, they have them on their websites, but no one goes to read them. So I think that back to what I would change, I want the auction houses to be more aggressive in educating the hobby about what their rules are. Don't just bury them on your website at the bottom of the page where you got to click on terms and conditions and read through a bunch of fine print like I've been doing for 2 months now. 32 sets of these things. And sometimes you got to search them out, Greg. Sometimes they're not so easy to find. I've had to email and ask for them at times and say, what are your policies on this? I'm still waiting to hear back from a couple auction houses. But I won't get
some
away.
of us would say, oh, well, what would be a great series is if Jeremy went through and he said, prestige auctions. This is this, this is this, this is this. Watch this before bidding there. But then with a couple of clicks, they could change it. And then that is obsolete at that
Yeah.
point. So it's like the timestamp of the rules, but at least that would be a step. And in the video that's going to post, it posted yesterday. If people are listening to this today, because this is Friday, that people will be listening to this, I hope. And Thursday was with Hoj, and Hoj proposed a pretty interesting idea, which was to have a rating system of all of the auction houses, and the rating system basically say these are the rules for this auction house, which creates a reliability of X or Y or Z. And then this one, the rules are allow for all these other things. So we're going to rate them lower. So then when you look at a sale from that auction house, you attach the rating to come up with it. But again, I think that and I think there's some merit. I think there's some legs to something like that. The issue though is, we have to be informed. We have to be informed.
The issue is not only, we have to be informed. The issue on that is also enforcement. Just because you put policies on paper on your website doesn't mean that the management of the business are going to enforce those policies or even look into them. So I like that idea by Hoj, and I've even thought about it as far as Appendix F goes of the book to implement my own sort of rating system, or at least some sort of ranking, or something like that. I don't know that that's really like, I think you have to judge for yourself what what policies you're willing to become a part of, and to whose policies whose auction company you're willing to bid in based on their policies. It's not that hard once you have it laid out in front of you. You can find a card on an auction house. You can go to Appendix F of Pops and Comps and look and see what their important policies are. Some of the policies aren't as important, or they're just there because it's legalese, as you well know. But really, to me, an auction house can have a policy that says no bid manipulation, no collusion, no shill bidding. Okay, great. But what happens if it happens on their site? For Hoj's idea, I would want to know how these auction companies handle these instances where it happens. What are they doing when they catch somebody on their platform doing something bad? To me, the policy is one thing, but what the enforcement of the policy, that's where a ranking system will actually be valuable to hobbyists. Otherwise, just go read the policies you see and decide. I do like, and I don't know if this was what Hoj's idea was, but I like the idea of having, like some sort of ranking or confidence based on the source of the comp. And
that's what he was getting at. Yeah.
Right. And then it's tied into the reputation of the auction company, which is more than just their terms and conditions. It's their overall reputation. How do they handle these things? Is shill bidding commonly happening on their platform that people are aware of, or at least suspicious of? I could see that being a good tool.
I like that we're starting to be thinking about and brainstorming, improvements for the situation, bringing things to light in the situation, making people aware of things in the current climate, because then we can start to move forward and start to put some pressure on them. Now, the book is called Pops and Comps. We just talked about comps. So my question here is, if you were to finish this sentence, pop reports are, how would you finish that?
wildly inaccurate.
And as a follow-up, how important is the accuracy of them?
Well, I mean, I love that question. The reason I'm laughing is because like there is no accuracy, so the importance is it's a moot point, right?
Okay. I see. I'm looking forward to the day where I look up the population of a particular card, and the total pop is more than it's numbered to. That
Oh,
it's it's
there's
out of
examples.
25, and there's 35 in the population report.
LeBron James, I think it's his ultimate collection rookie, auto print run of 250, global pop over 300. So
Well, there you have it.
you're making me disclose some of the nuggets in
I
pops
love
and
it.
comps.
But you gotta give people a little taste so they can see, well, what other nuggets are in there. I love
Yeah.
that. All right, next one. The hobby really needs to blank.
Uh, the hobby really needs to, and the easy one is educate itself, but also approach the inputs to your decision making with a level of healthy skepticism, what I would call professional skepticism, if this was something different. But here, healthy skepticism, but also, if this is still supposed to be fun and a hobby, and
Yeah.
we're not leaving it. So the hobby also needs to, I think, just manage its expectations a little bit, and yeah, just understand that in every card you're buying, there's a little bit of shill in that price.
And
Unfortunately.
unfortunately, exactly. All right, I got 3 more for you. Um, besides Greg, my favorite part of the hobby is blank.
It's just Greg. I mean, there's no besides Greg. It's just Greg. My favorite part
I
of
had to put a plug in there for myself, so
my favorite part of the hobby, Greg, is oh my gosh. I mean, it's the community. It's
Yeah,
such an easy answer, but for me, it's the community. I got to immerse myself in it at the Toronto Expo 2 weekends ago. It's the real friendships that I am so fortunate to have with so many people. Like I think if it wasn't for the hobby, I'd be pretty lonely.
yeah.
Uh, we
You are gonna
yeah.
love Strong, so you have to go.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it. It is basically we turn this hotel into a frat house for an entire weekend, and it's all the card guys. It is fantastic. All right, I got 2 more for you. Number 9, my biggest hobby prediction for 2026 is
By the way, to everyone watching and listening, Greg gave me no heads up on any of these questions, and
none,
this one,
0 heads up.
yeah, zero
That's
heads
what
up.
makes it fun.
My biggest hobby prediction for next year is that I will still be in it and going stronger than ever before. Uh, that's an easy, I know. Um, I think we're going to see the hobby leveling up a little bit. And I don't mean the corporate side of it. I mean the collectors. Especially if I have anything to do with it. I think, and by that I mean publishing a book. I am working on another project that I'm hoping to release broadly, hopefully in time for Strongsville, hopefully earlier, hopefully by February. That is going to be just something that I think is going to help level up the hobby. I hope that we continue to educate ourselves and just approach things sort of skeptically. I know I'm just repeating myself now, Greg,
No, you're
and
not.
I say that, but also like I don't want to like suffocate myself here and not bid on any cards anymore because I'm just so paranoid that everything's manipulated.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not willing for that to happen. I'm not going to stop buying cards. I may as well just pack in this whole hobby if that's the case. The community is wonderful, Greg, but we also have the cards, and I love the cards, and I want to keep collecting them. And they whatever it says about me, they make me happy. Cards do make me happy, so I want to continue to build my collection, curate my collection, leveling up the hobby. It might be because we, the collectors, and the corporate entities are starting to communicate more and becoming more transparent on things. The gambling aspect of the hobby has to continue to be addressed. It's not going to go away. Breaking, repacks, it's not going to go away. I think that people, on the one hand, we need to take responsibility for our own decisions that we're making, how we're spending our money. On the other hand, I think that it is the responsibility of the hobby to help people who are having issues and that aren't able to control their expenditures. I think all of this stuff leads toward the hobby leveling up, and I think it's happening. Collectors MD with sports card collecting addiction, all this conversation about auction houses, all the attention on real shill bidding now, and by real I just mean price manipulation outside of the reserve issues that we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Because
Yeah.
I'm able to reconcile those that bidding up to one increment below the reserve stuff, as long as it's something has to change there in terms of the transparency, but I can live with that. I can't live as well with blatantly shill bidding up your own cards or having your cousin 2 states over place bids on your behalf. It's never going to stop, Greg, but I think we just need to level up, and I think leveling up is going to start to happen more than ever because it's snowballing. More and more people are pissed off, and I think we have a right to be.
I agree, and I think the channels and the hobby content that I love the most are the ones that revolve around critical thought and analysis and looking into things and not just going. Too many people want to just be told what the value is instead of, like, with the just eye appeal. Eye appeal changes the complete. You can throw half the comps out when you start factoring in things like that. And the reason why some people don't like that is it's so much easier to go, well, it's an 8, so it's worth an 8. That's easy. People want easy, but we need critical thought, and that's what eye appeal is it requires critical thought, a critical eye to actually have a thought of, well, I know it's an 8, but that 7 looks a lot cooler. That's a lot more fun to look at that 7 than that 8. And I think I agree with you. I think there's more critical thinking. I think there's more analysis that's starting to happen. And I love the channels. I love the content. And that's one of the things I love about your Saturday sports cars lives is that's basically you're talking about concepts and ideas and analysis. And that to me is the thing that I like the most. Now,
Same.
my last question, I did skip one, but I'm just going to leave it off because I've taken you over an hour already, and I feel badly. But
It's okay.
here's
I'll watch this back in 1.5 anyway.
hey, here's the last one. I think that there's been so much negativity recently. There's been so much anger and people saying I'm getting out because everything is a sham, and I don't agree with all of that, but there's a lot of people in that, and I think we need to continue to be bringing in positivity. And you mentioned your favorite part of the hobby other than me is the community. And what's a memory? What is something a specific memory or event or purchase or encounter from 2025 that when you look back on 2025, that will be the year of what's the memory? What's the core memory?
Well, personally, for me, selfishly for me, I think that 2025 for me will be defined as the year that I acquired that Joe Jackson card. That was a major collection transition for me. But it's also going to be writing this book and creating this other project that I've been working on, which have been like extreme creative expressions of mine. And I can't tell you, Greg, how happy I've been like since I started these projects. Like I'm literally bouncing around because I've never in my life felt like I've had this outpouring of creativity. And I'm so excited about these projects, and just for myself, I hope they're successful out there. I hope other people enjoy them and want to be a part of them. But just for me personally, 2025 has been about those two things. But so those are memories that are months long, though. You know, the Toronto Expo, I had one of the best times I've ever had at a card show at this past expo. It was just awesome. And then this one might take you by surprise, but that night at the National, when we had the YouTube get together, that ended
Yeah.
up being almost I use the term for just for fun, a disaster, because we were kind of walking around with our heads cut off trying to figure out where to go. But that to me is a great memory of being amongst other people. We were just kind of standing around in various places, but conversations were happening. We all congregated, had a picnic right outside the one hotel there. Later on, I ended up running into you and at Chulis Joe's and a whole bunch of the other guys. Like, that night was a fun memory. Sure, we could have all been at the, I think at the whatever
Embassy
hotel,
Suites.
at the Embassy Suites. It would have been a different memory, but I am maybe one of the only people who look back on that night and think about Mike Moynihan and his concern for the community. I think about Justin Hirsch from Rabbit Hole Auctions doing everything he could to make sure that the pizza that he sponsored got there. It finally came. Not that it finally came. We finally had somewhere to bring it.
Yeah.
So those are the memories for me that I think 2025 will stick out, that will stick out for me from this year. And as again, also this with you here tonight, a full year of Sports Cards Live 2.0, the new format. 2025, I think, will go down as one of the best years of my life.
That's fantastic. And hearing that and seeing the excitement that you have tonight in all of the things that you're sharing is really really fun. I can't believe that a year ago now, we didn't know each other, and
Hard to believe.
those, yeah, it's hard to believe. And those relationships in this hobby and in this community, they grow so quickly. We're able to attach ourselves to people so quickly. Um, I want to tell you one of the highlights, truly, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. One of the highlights of my 3+ years making YouTube videos is being able to have you on the channel and being able to spend the last hour with you. This is a huge honor for me. You're vitally important to this community. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your friendship, the private phone calls, the texts, all of that. Getting to meet you in person at the National is one of the absolute highlights of the National for me. And so it means a lot to me that you came on. I'm sorry it took so long. And I just ask that you promise, when you finally share your next project that you've been secretly working on, that you'll come back on and we'll talk about it and you'll share it here and we'll look at it together so that we can share it with the rest of the community.
We will for sure do that, Greg, and that will be after you've actually used it, and you'll
Sounds
have
good.
something of your own to share as well. Yeah.
I look
All
forward
right.
to that. All
Thank you.
right, buddy.
I just got to say thank you for all those kind words, Greg. Like, yeah, I love you, man. Like, seriously, you are an asset to this hobby. You are the master at building community in this hobby. You paid me some great compliments about live streaming. You are that in terms of building community and bringing people together, not just around you, but bringing people together themselves. So a highlight was to meet you, your dad at the National. A highlight for me too was having my dad at the National and at
Yeah,
the vintage dinner as
yeah,
well. I want to mention that too.
yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for those kind words. Thank you for having me on. Better. I don't even want to say better late than never. I feel like I've been here before, so I'm
It
just
does feel that way, actually.
yeah,
It does feel that way.
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank
Well,
you so much.
honored, truly honored to have you on. Everybody, appreciate you sticking through us for an hour and 9 minutes. But at the end of the day, it's just a couple of nerdy guys who love cards and getting to talk about it. And it's hard to shut us up because we get so excited about it for whatever that is, for better or worse. That's what this was. And I hope that that joy rubbed off to everybody out there listening. So, thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate you, Jeremy. Looking forward to having another conversation.